The words still echo in my ears even now. You're ungrateful. Get out and never come back. It was a Wednesday night in mid-October, the air in Des Moines already carrying that brittle edge of early frost. The living room was dim, save for the golden glow of the floor lamp beside the couch, where my father sat, arms crossed, jaw clenched tight like he was holding back an explosion. My mother stood beside him, her expression tight with something between exhaustion and disgust. Brandon, my younger brother, lingered by the kitchen, half watching, half pretending this scene had nothing to do with him. I stood there holding a printed invoice in my hand, an overdraft notice from my bank. Not because I had overspent, but because someone had withdrawn nearly $3,000 from the emergency fund I'd been building for years. A fund I'd foolishly left linked to our shared family account for safety. When I asked about it, calmly, rationally, my mother said it was used to help Brandon cover an unexpected tuition gap. You weren't using it, she shrugged, and we didn't want him to take out more loans. No apology, no permission, just expectation. And when I just asked, why I hadn't been informed, my father stood up, his voice rising like a thunderclap. You act like this house is yours because you pay the bills. Because I do, I whispered, my voice trembling. I've paid the mortgage for the last 23 months. I've paid utilities, groceries, Brandon's books, your medications. My mother's voice was icy. And you throw that in our face every chance you get. I've never thrown anything. You're ungrateful, my father snapped. After all we've done for you, get out and never come back. And just like that, I stopped being their daughter. I became a problem to be removed. I wish I could say I fought back, that I screamed, that I broke something, but the silence was louder than rage. I looked around the room at the people I had worked so hard to protect and realized none of them were going to stop me. So I left. I packed a single duffel bag and drove to Emma's apartment across town. She opened the door and took one look at my face before pulling me into a hug that said everything I hadn't been able to say. I didn't cry, not yet. Not until later, when I sat on her bathroom floor, still wearing the same clothes, realizing for the first time in my adult life that I had nowhere to go and no one who wanted me. For weeks, the silence from my family was absolute. No calls, no texts, no apology. And then, exactly 3 months and 12 days later, my phone buzzed as I stood in the cereal aisle of Hy-Vee, comparing oatmeal prices. A single message from my father. Why haven't you paid the mortgage? No, hello. No, how are you? No, we miss you. Just 6 words. Cold, entitled, calculated. That was the moment I understood everything. They hadn't banished me because they stopped loving me. They had banished me because they thought I would still keep paying. They didn't lose a daughter. They lost an income stream. And this time, I wasn't coming back. I wasn't always someone who counted dollars like they were lifelines. There was a time I thought love looked like giving without limits, and family meant never letting anyone fall, no matter how heavy it got to carry them. I grew up in a 2-bedroom house on the south side of Des Moines, a modest place with peeling window frames and a furnace that wheezed in winter. My father, Douglas Reynolds, worked at an auto repair shop, fingers always stained with grease and pride. My mother, Linda, did part-time bookkeeping for a small clinic until migraines forced her to cut back. And then there was Brandon, 3 years younger, golden boy smile, the kind of charm that made teachers excuse his tardiness and neighbors offer free snacks. I was the opposite, the dependable one, the fixer. When my father lost hours after a slowdown in business during my senior year of high school, I didn't wait for anyone to ask. I applied at the grocery store down the block and started working weekends. When Mom's migraines flared up, I learned how to manage her prescriptions and prepare bland food that wouldn't upset her stomach. When I got accepted to the University of Iowa, full of scholarships and out-of-state dreams, I turned it down quietly. Instead, I enrolled at a local community college and commuted from home to save money. I never told anyone about the scholarship. They needed me. I kept working through school. Day classes, night shifts. I moved into a marketing degree and landed an internship that turned into a job right after graduation. I should have moved out then, but instead I stayed. Just until we get caught up, Mom said. Just a few months, Dad added. That was almost 4 years ago. It started small. Can you help with the water bill this month? Do you mind covering groceries until Dad's next paycheck? Then one night over dinner, my father asked, careful not to meet my eyes, do you think you could take over the mortgage for a little while? It was $1,673 a month. And I said yes without blinking, because that's what good daughters do. From that moment on, everything shifted. I stopped thinking of my paycheck as mine. I picked up a second job on weekends at a retail store, skipped happy hours and office events, and sent every extra cent home. I paid for Brandon's textbooks, hundreds of dollars each semester. When the family car needed repairs, I covered the $900 invoice. I bought new tires when winter hit hard. When the microwave broke, I ordered one online before they even asked. When Mom needed blood work, I handled the copays. They never had to ask twice. Eventually, they stopped asking altogether, because they knew I would say yes. My apartment fund? Gone. My vacation fund? Non-existent. My retirement savings? Laughable. But there was a strange satisfaction in knowing I was holding everything together. Every time someone praised my selflessness, I felt seen. At church, at work, even among extended family. Ava's such a blessing, they'd say. So mature for her age. Even when I started to feel the cracks, missed outings with friends, exhaustion so thick I couldn't remember the last time I read for pleasure, I pushed through, because being needed made me feel valuable. But the praise was conditional, and one day it just stopped. It wasn't gradual. It was like someone flipped a switch, and suddenly I wasn't the hero anymore. I was just the one who stayed. They stopped saying thank you, stopped including me in decisions, even though I paid the bills. And when Brandon needed extra money for a special opportunity at school, they didn't ask. They just took. The savings account I had started quietly for myself was drained without warning. My father shrugged when I asked. We didn't think you'd mind. When I asked again, more firmly, my mother's voice turned sharp. You're always so dramatic about money, Ava. We've never had to worry about it because of you. Why start now? Why start now? Maybe because for the first time I wanted something for myself. Not much, just a little breathing room. But even that was too much to ask. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had just kept giving. If I had stayed silent and let them take whatever they wanted until there was nothing left. But the truth is, I was already disappearing, piece by piece, and they didn't even notice. It started with small comments, barely noticeable at first, like tiny cracks in a window that you only see when the light hits just right. But once you see them, you can't unsee them. One Sunday dinner, while slicing roast chicken, my mom said casually, Debbie's daughter just got engaged. 24, already locking down her future. I looked up from the salad bowl, confused. That's great for her. She's got it all, career, social life, relationship. Some girls know how to balance things, you know. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. A few weeks later, my dad asked while sipping coffee, When's the last time you went on a date, Ava? I blinked. I don't know. I've been busy. Yeah, all work and no play. Not healthy, he muttered. They weren't trying to be cruel, not openly. But something in their tone had changed. They no longer looked at me with pride. Now it was pity, laced with subtle judgment. I still worked 60 hours a week, still covered every household expense, still drove my mom to appointments, still paid for Brandon's spring semester lab fees. But now, it was like all of that wasn't enough. Or worse, like none of it mattered. My brother came home for spring break and talked for 30 minutes straight about his fraternity's Cancun plans. It's not just fun, he said. It's networking. Gotta make connections early, you know. Our parents beamed. We'll help out with the airfare, Dad said, reaching for his wallet. I had never been on a plane. A week later, I bought a $14 book from a local shop, something about personal growth. My dad glanced at the receipt and muttered, "Must be nice to throw money around." I froze. That was the same week I'd covered a $480 car repair bill and refilled the fridge again. Every time I spent even a cent on myself, it was treated like an extravagance. Brandon could order takeout 3 nights a week and no one batted an eye. I bought a new pair of work shoes and suddenly I was wasting money. Then came the renovations. My parents had always talked about updating the kitchen. One night over dinner, my mom spread out paint samples and magazine pages. "We've finally saved enough," she said brightly. "It's time to make this house feel like home again." "Saved enough?" I asked gently. "Oh, not us," Dad said. "We figured you could cover it. You're the one good with money." My chest tightened. "Do I get any say in the choices?" My mom scoffed. "It's our house, Ava. We've lived here nearly 30 years. I think we know what we like." Our house! Funny how it only became ours when I asked for a say. When it came to paying, suddenly it was all mine. And then came the promotion. My manager offered me a chance to move up, a real leadership role. Better hours, higher pay, a shot at something bigger than survival. But it meant giving up the weekend job, cutting back my income short term. I came home excited. I expected congratulations, maybe even a hug. Instead, "So you're abandoning us for a fancier title?" my dad asked. My mom folded her arms. "We depend on that extra income, Ava. You can't just walk away because you want to feel important." They didn't hear opportunity. They saw risk to their comfort. That was the moment it hit me. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was their investment, and the return was no longer guaranteed. Even Emma noticed it when she visited. We sat down for dinner, me, my parents, Brandon, and Emma. She watched in stunned silence as they fawned over Brandon's internship, laughed at his stories, asked follow-up questions about his professors. When I brought up a marketing campaign I had successfully pitched at work, my dad nodded vaguely and turned to ask Brandon if his roommates still played poker. Emma tried to redirect. "Ava's been amazing. 2 jobs, managing the house, keeping things together. You're lucky to have her." Silence. My mother changed the subject. My brother picked at his food. No one looked at me. That night, Emma pulled me aside in the guest room. "Do you feel appreciated here?" she asked quietly. "Of course," I said automatically. "That's not what I asked." I looked away. "You love them," she said. "That's obvious. But do they see you, Ava? Or do they just use you?" And for the first time I couldn't answer. Leaving didn't feel brave. It felt like defeat. I packed my things in silence. 2 suitcases, my laptop, a few keepsakes, and left behind a decade of furniture, family photos, and carefully curated belongings I once thought made this house a home. No one tried to stop me. No one came to the doorway to say goodbye. As I closed the front door behind me, I realized I had just disappeared from their lives. And they let me. Emma didn't ask questions. She opened her apartment door and simply said, "You're safe now." That night, I lay awake on her couch, staring at the ceiling, ears ringing with the echoes of every accusation. Selfish, controlling, manipulative, pathetic. I waited for the phone to ring, for a message, an apology, anything. It never came. The first week was a blur of tears and silence. Grocery aisles made me cry. The smell of Mom's lavender shampoo at the drugstore cracked my composure. I avoided the neighborhood coffee shop, afraid someone might ask about my parents. But then something shifted. I got my first paycheck without deductions for utilities or mortgage or medication refills. For the first time in years, I had money left over after rent and groceries. I bought myself a real dinner, salmon, salad, a small bottle of wine. And I didn't feel guilty. I replaced my worn work shoes, bought a new blazer. I even subscribed to an online course I'd been eyeing for months. It felt strange. like I was breaking some unspoken family rule, but also intoxicating. At work, I began arriving earlier, staying later, volunteering for leadership projects, without the constant anxiety of financial emergencies or doctor appointments. I could finally think, create, lead, thrive. My manager noticed immediately. "You seem lighter," she said during a one-on-one. "Whatever you're doing, keep going." I started therapy at Emma's gentle suggestion. That's where I first heard the word parentification. When a child is forced to take on adult responsibilities emotionally or financially for their family, Dr. Chin explained, it shifts their identity toward service and self-erasure. Everything clicked. Every feeling of obligation, guilt, overextension, wasn't just in my head. It was a pattern, a survival mechanism. And it wasn't love. It was conditioning. We talked about boundaries, about the difference between helping and enabling, about how love shouldn't require you to erase yourself. I began to heal. I joined a book club, took a painting class, went on a few dates, real dates, where I didn't check my bank balance between dinner and dessert. I even began dreaming again. Graduate school, a solo trip abroad, starting my own business one day. I moved into a small studio downtown with exposed brick walls and light that poured through the windows each morning like possibility. I picked out every piece of furniture myself. I painted the walls soft gray and hung up art that made me feel something. I filled the fridge with food I liked, cooked meals that only needed to please me. Every inch of that space was mine, physically, emotionally, spiritually. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to breathe. And then one Tuesday evening, exactly 3 months and 12 days since the night I walked out, I stood in the cereal aisle of Hy-Vee, trying to decide between steel-cut oats or instant. My phone buzzed. Douglas Reynolds. I stared at the screen. My heart raced. My fingers trembled. A text. Just 6 words. "Why haven't you paid the mortgage?" Not "Are you okay?" Not "We miss you." Not "Can we talk?" Just a bill. Just a reminder of what they thought I was worth. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I took a screenshot and sent it to Emma with the caption. Apparently I was never unwelcome. Just temporarily inconvenient. That's when I knew. They hadn't lost a daughter. They had lost control. And for the first time, I wasn't the one who needed to explain anything. I didn't reply right away. I stood in the cereal aisle for a full 5 minutes, watching people pass with their carts. Families laughing, couples debating which almond milk to buy, teenagers with earbuds tucked under hoodies. Normalcy moving around me while I stood frozen, phone still glowing in my palm. "Why haven't you paid the mortgage?" No question mark, no greeting, just expectation. I stared at the message, my stomach sinking, not with sadness but with recognition. This wasn't an olive branch. It wasn't even a manipulation wrapped in sentiment. It was a bill. I took a deep breath and called them. The phone rang once, twice. Then, "Ava," my father answered. His voice was tight, urgent. "Thank God. We've been waiting to hear from you." I didn't say anything right away. "We need to talk," he said. "There's been a misunderstanding about what happened that night." "What kind of misunderstanding?" I asked quietly. There was a pause, then a rush of words. "We were all upset," he said. "Things were said that we didn't mean. You know how family fights are. You can't take everything so literally." "Actually," I said, leaning against my cart, "in healthy families, people don't say get out and never come back unless they mean it." Another pause. "Ava, please. We love you. We miss you. This whole thing, it's gotten out of hand." "Before we talk about love," I said calmly, "can I ask you something?" "What?" "How are things financially?" He hesitated. "It's been difficult. We've fallen behind. The banks started foreclosure proceedings. What happened to the money you saved by not having me around?" I asked. "All the groceries I didn't eat. The electricity I didn't use. The room I vacated. It's not that simple, he said. No, I agreed. It never is when I'm not paying. Then I heard it, her voice faint in the background. Is that her? Let me talk to her. A second later, my mother came on the line. Honey, she said, her voice coated in that practiced sweetness. We've been so worried. You left so suddenly. We didn't know how to reach you. You have my number, I replied. You had Emma's too. We didn't want to intrude, she said. We thought you needed space. And yet now you're texting me about the mortgage. Well, we're 3 months behind, she admitted. With penalties, it's about $6,000. We could lose the house, Ava. Is that what you want? To see your family lose everything? There it was. Not concern, not regret, just leverage. How much did Brandon's spring trip cost again? I asked. How much of the mortgage did that pay for? Silence. Then he's in school. He needs support. So did I said. Honey, you're punishing all of us over one fight. I'm respecting the boundary you set, I said. You told me to leave. You told me you didn't need my guilt trips or my money. I believed you. We said things we didn't mean. My father jumped back in. We thought you'd cool off, not disappear. What exactly did you think I'd do? I asked. Come crawling back? Keep paying while pretending everything was fine. No, my mother said quickly. Of course not. We want you to come home. We'll do better. We'll treat you better. You're our daughter. What would better look like? I asked. What changes are you actually prepared to make? We'd be more appreciative, she said. We'd try to listen more. Vague, hollow, safe promises with no specifics. And if I don't move back? I asked. If I still need time? There was a pause. Well, we'd still need help with the mortgage, she said. So there it was. The truth. It wasn't about reconciliation. It was about cash flow. You want my money, I said. Not me. That's not true, she snapped. Yes, it is, I replied. If you missed me, you would have reached out before the bank did. We didn't know how, my father insisted. You didn't want to, I said, because you didn't think you needed me until you realized you actually did. You're being unfair, my mother said. No, I said softly. I'm being clear. For once. They both went quiet. Then Dad spoke again. Brandon's going to have to drop out of school if we lose the house. There it was. The guilt. The final card. He's 23, I said. He can get a part-time job. He can take out loans. Like I did. Like millions of other students do every day. He'll struggle, Mom said. He's not like you. I know, I said. That's the problem. I told them I'd call back in 2 days, not because I needed time, but because I wanted them to sit with the silence I had sat in for months. And this time they would be the ones waiting. 2 days passed. I didn't feel anxious. I didn't second guess. I didn't replay the conversation or wonder if I was overreacting. For once, I was ready. When I called, my father answered on the first ring. Ava, he said, relief flooding his voice. We're so glad you called. I've made my decision, I said calmly. Silence. I won't be moving back, I continued, and I won't be helping with the mortgage or anything else. The line went quiet. For a second, I thought the call had dropped. Then came my mother's voice, sharp, indignant. What do you mean? After everything we talked about, I mean what I said. I interrupted. I'm not coming back, and I'm not sending money. But we explained, my dad said quickly. That night we were upset. We didn't mean what we said. You did, I replied. You just didn't expect me to believe you. That's not fair, my mom snapped. We gave you space. No, I said, my voice steady. You gave me silence, and now that you need something, you're breaking it. They didn't respond, so I kept going. You told me I was manipulative for being involved in your finances. You said I was controlling, so I removed myself. You're being vindictive, my mother said. You're punishing us. No, I said. I'm protecting myself. The calm in my voice surprised even me. You spent 3 years accepting my money while criticizing me. You made me feel guilty for every personal purchase. You built a life around my labor, then told me I was a burden. My father tried again. You're still our daughter. Then treat me like one, I replied. Not a bank. We're losing the house, he said, voice breaking for the first time. I'm sorry, I said, but that's not my responsibility. My mother's voice returned, this time pleading. What about Brandon? He'll have to drop out. Do you want that on your conscience? I almost laughed. I wanted a degree too, I said, but I stayed home, worked 2 jobs, gave up scholarships, so Brandon could have what I never did. You don't mean that, she said. I mean every word. The next 30 minutes were a mix of bargaining, emotional manipulation, and empty promises. We'll change. We didn't realize how much you were hurting. We just want our family back. But it was too late. I spent 3 years being your safety net, I said. You spent 3 years making sure I never felt safe. Then I said the words I had been holding in since that night in the living room. Don't contact me again, unless it's not about money. And then I hung up. I blocked their numbers. And for the first time in my adult life, I exhaled without guilt. 6 months later, I got promoted to senior marketing manager. My salary jumped. My title changed. But the most valuable thing I gained was not the paycheck, it was the peace. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and hardwood floors that gleamed like morning light. I bought a balcony garden. I traveled to Italy with Emma. I started dating someone who looked at me like I was a person, not a provider. I still think of them sometimes, not with bitterness, but with distance. Through social media, I learned they lost the house. They moved into a smaller rental. Brandon transferred to a community college. They cut back on expenses, started living like adults. And I didn't feel guilty. I felt free, because love isn't control, family isn't ownership, and sacrifice should never be the only way you earn your place. I used to believe being a good daughter meant giving up everything to keep others comfortable. But now I know being a good daughter means loving yourself enough to leave when love becomes a leash. They shouted, "You're ungrateful. Get out and never come back." I did, and it was the best decision I ever made.